In this tutorial, I will be explaining the differences between the where clause and the having clause of SQL. To explain the difference between the where clause and the having clause in SQL, let's focus on a problem. Which positions are currently in the running for the Art Ross Trophy? This trophy is given to the hockey player with the most points in a season. The total number of points for a player is determined by the sum of their goals and assists. Let's see how the where clause and the having clause can be used to solve this problem and the differences we encounter along the way. Here is our team table. Each row contains the name, position, number of goals, and number of assists for a player. Let's start by trying to solve the problem using only the where clause. The SQL statement using the where clause would be to select the position and the sum of the goals and assists columns from the team table where the position of the player is not goalie, and then group them by their position and order them in descending order based on the points column. Walking through this example, the where clause works by going through each row of the table and applying the where clause to each row individually. It therefore checks if the position is not a goalie, and if the condition evaluates to true, then that row and its position and sum of goals and assists is selected. We can see the following rows with arrows are selected, but the last one is not, as that player is a goalie. The goals and assists for each of the positions that are not goalie are summed, and the positions with these aggregated points values are selected and placed in a new table. Each of the positions is then grouped and their total points are summed up. Finally, the positions are sorted by their number of points in descending order. As we can see though, this doesn't give us the best answer. We don't want to know all of the positions. It would have been nice to be able to apply a condition to the points column. This is where the having clause differs from the where clause. We start again with the same table, but our SQL statement is slightly different, with the addition of one line, the having clause. In this example, we want the points of our grouped positions to be greater than 100. In the previous example, we could not have had a where clause such as where the position does not equal goalie and the sum of the goals and assists is greater than 100. This is because where cannot be used on aggregate values such as our points column. In order to apply a condition to aggregate values, we must use the having clause. Again, the where clause works by going through each row of the table and applying the where condition to each row individually. If the position is not a goalie, then that row is chosen and its position and sum of goals and assists is selected. In this case, the same rows were selected as the last example. We now have groups based on position with their aggregated points value, which is the answer we achieved in the last example. We now want to apply the condition that points is greater than 100. We therefore use the having clause and apply this condition to the table, which will give us more of an idea of what position the player who wins the Art Ross Trophy might play. These are also ordered by points in descending order. As we can see, our results are very similar to the results from the where clause, but differ in that the having clause can get us a more precise answer by being applied to aggregate values and groups. This concludes our example on the where clause versus the having clause. Next time you are solving a problem using SQL, remember these simple things. The where clause applies to each row individually. Then they can be grouped together, but they can never be applied to aggregate values. Whereas the having clause applies to groups of rows after they have been grouped together, and they can always be applied to aggregate values.